Alright class, I'm here to show you guys your microorganism sculpture project demo. And this is a little bit different than everything else we've done in this class to this point because it's sculptural, and there's all kinds of different techniques that we want to show you to be able to do this. So number one is choosing a shape that you want to build off of, or a base that you're going to actually build and put textures on top of. So that shape can be anything you want. It could be organic, it could be geometric, it could be something specific, but whatever that is, you need to decide what that is and build that out of a pretty big chunk of clay. This is a large chunk of clay, 4 or 5 pounds. I'm going to end up taking a lot of that clay away at some point, or here very soon. But I want to make sure I like that shape and that it's going to suit the textures and my overall goal. So I like to kind of use the table to help form this for myself. I want to bring this down just a little bit, but I think having some abrupt edges and kind of like an interesting form to build on top of is always what you're looking for to start. So take your time figuring that out, or thinking about what that might look like. And every time I do this looks a little different, so it really can be whatever you want it to. But once I have that form built out like this, now I need to get rid of that clay. I have all that clay on the inside, and our general rule is that we never want to have clay more than 1 inch thick in any direction. And if it is, there's a good chance it could blow up in the kiln. Also, the second thing is if we hollow something out to the point where it's enclosed, we need to have an air hole, and I'll show you guys that later. But what I do is, this tool is a lifesaver for this project. One of these nice loop tools, or even a trimming tool that we use on the wheel usually, could work for this. But this one specifically is my favorite because it just cuts away clay so nicely. You can see I'm just taking away a little bit at a time. But I need to hollow this chunk of clay out. So even though this started with 4 or 5 pounds, I'm probably going to end up with a lot less than that, or more than half of that weight. It's probably only going to end up being 1 pound or 2. So this is going to have a big enough hole at the bottom. It's not enclosed, so I don't have to worry about creating an air hole. This is its own air hole, but I'll create something that's hollow, add that to the form, and that will make sure to have some sort of air hole to it. So I could really take my time to make sure this looks clean and it's the perfect thickness. I don't really have any wasteful clay going on in here. But you guys get the point. You would do this till you have that requirement of no more than 1 inch of clay in any direction. Okay? So clean that up too. Get rid of any marks. And the cool thing about that is it still looks like it's that much clay and that heavy, right? But that's my base. That's what I'm going to be working off of. And from here, now we need to add at least 3 textures. And when I say textures, that can mean anything from 3-dimensional designs or textures that you can actually use from tools. And I think that's probably the best thing you can do first, is lay down some actual textures that are maybe a little more 2-dimensional. And that way you can see them from the base, and that you can kind of build off of those. On top of those, I should say. And adding this at the right time is important, not when the clay is too wet, but just kind of creating an interesting pattern or design that might help me lead my future textures. into certain spots and stuff. So that could be one technically. Another one I could do is you could go back to some previous techniques and things we've done in here, like add a coil or multiple coils. To the base. So hand rolling out a coil. And I like to do this braided looking thing sometimes with this project. I think it looks cool. If you make a long enough coil or just 2 coils, you can cut this in half. And you can just slightly braid these. Create kind of a cool looking thing. So this is what I would be doing for this, and I'm not going to slip and score anything because I'm not keeping it, but you'll definitely want to. But I think creating some sort of positive and negative space, or things that kind of you can see through or create interesting visual components to it, can make this really interesting and fun. So this is kind of something I could play with to start. Something else I like to do for this project is create, repetitive pattern in shape. Remember, we're looking at this like it's a microorganism, and you're creating your own, and it can have any patterns that you want on it. So create whatever you want, and then, but I think whatever it is you do create, it should have multiples, and it should be repetitive, because if you've ever looked under a microscope at something, there's always more than one thing, and that's what pattern is all about too. Pattern always incorporates more than one shape or design or whatever it is. So whatever you want to call these, I'm adding multiples of. I would slip and score each in one. They can kind of play with each other and kind of entangle each other a little bit, which creates very cool composition. And you can see how easy it is to roll these out, so you can make a lot of these in a short amount of time. And if I had as much time as you guys do, I'd spend a whole period just creating one texture and making it look really good and interesting, something like this, but more detailed. Couple other things that you guys could do is you could take away and add space. A tool like this you could use to draw or create patterns in or designs, but I always thought this would be kind of cool, or this is a cool way to take away space. But if you do it right and you cut nice and cleanly, you can actually take some of this space that you cut away and you can put it back onto the form to kind of replace that clay that you took away. You could do this really cleanly and create a repetitive pattern where this is happening multiple times back and forth. And that way you really have a three-dimensional texture going on the base of this sculpture. One other major thing I want to show you guys is, I'm going to set this aside for a minute, but you could grab a large ball of clay, and this could even be your base for your microorganism, and you could do multiple of these. We're trying to have 3 textures onto a base that's like at least 6 inches. So this would just be a couple inches, so you can make like 3 of these to fit that criteria, and then put a different texture on each one of these. But to do that, the way I do it is either use a knife tool or even a wire cutter, cut this in half. And once again, we need to get rid of this excess clay, right, on the inside. None of that is necessary to leave behind. We can recycle that. And we're going to put this back together. And this is what I was talking about when we have something hollow. You need to have an air hole to the outside. Otherwise, that air gets trapped, has nowhere to go, and it will blow up in the kiln. And we don't want that to happen. So once again, no more than an inch thick in any direction. Clean that up nice and good. Now I have two hollow sides. Try to find exactly where those two originally lined up. And once again, if you do this right and do it cleanly enough, you can make this look like it's not even hollow, right? Kind of play with it to get it back to where it looked like. And then if I wanted to fire something like this, it would have to have a hole in it. So, creating something or a hole somewhat like that, as long as it goes to the inside and comes out to the outside, that would be fine. But you could even incorporate that into your texture. And I think this is another way of showing you guys that you can use any tool to create a texture. And if you use repetition, it can create a pattern. And it can make it really interesting and a fun design to add to your microorganism. Do that at a little better of a time when it's not so wet. It could be a lot cleaner. But I kind of want to show you what you could also do with this. You can make 3 of these and have 3 different textures on them and really add to this and really clean it up. But what I'm going to do with it is actually cut it back in half. And I'm not going to use that side, but I could reuse this back on this sculpture and add another texture to this design. This is actually like a full other part of this microorganism that has its own design on top of that. And that could be cool. So I have multiple going on. One other that I like to do and show is just as simple as using your hands and the clay in your hands, and you could grip this and create a cool pattern. Cut this away cleanly and create some cool ridges in the clay that look organic or like almost something from the ocean maybe. And I'm really starting to add a lot of clay to this, so maybe making sure I hollow something like this out too. Get rid of that extra clay that's not really going to be used. But that could be another addition that has another texture on it, and try to fill the whole space. It's a composition that needs to be thought about and figured out properly so it looks good. And this is totally abstract. It's not supposed to really look like anything. It's a sculpture, so it should be somewhat organic and abstract if you want it to be. And there's just a bunch of cleaning and things that I can do at this point. And if I did this a little slower, each of these pieces would look a little more refined and all come together really nice. And that's what you're trying to do over these 2 weeks. Just create a really nice finished product that has at least 3 textures or designs onto a base that also has texture on it. So enjoy it, have fun with it, and let me know if you have questions. Thanks. Bye.